Today we're going to be taking a look at some new audio hardware I've bought to upgrade the audio system in my office. Currently I just have a pair of basic Bose Companion 2 PC speakers, and while they don't sound particularly bad, they don't sound accurate. This isn't too bad when listening to music, but I'm starting to find when editing my videos I'm struggling to do the equalisation because the speakers are particularly bass heavy, and what I tend to do is then edit it and then afterwards listen on different speakers and realise that it sounds quite tinny because I've removed too much bass. So I've decided to go out and buy myself a sort of early Christmas present and get some proper studio monitors. So I did a fair bit of research into them, and I did my classic thing of looking at the fairly cheap ones, then going a bit higher end, then going a bit higher end, and then ending up spending all my budget on something over the top. But I finally decided to go for these, which are the Adam Audio T5V. Adam Audio is a brand I'd never heard of, but it turns out they're a very high-end German company that make a lot of very high-end monitor speakers. Normally they're priced well within my price range, you know, they're £500 up to £1,000 beyond that for some of them. They're really expensive, so I've never heard of them because they've always been way too expensive for me. However, this is their new T series, which is a more budget series. It's still expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than most of their other models, and they've carried over quite a lot of technology and features they've put in their higher end models into these more entry level ones. So these are a pair of active studio monitors, and they cost anywhere between about £125 and £140 each depending on where you buy them. However, bear in mind that's the price for one, not two, so if you want to buy two you have to buy them separately, they don't come as a pair. However, they should be very nice monitors. There's also the T7V, which is a 7-inch model. I decided to go for the T5V because I don't really need anything super loud or super powerful, and I wanted something a bit smaller, so these seems like an ideal option. So we'll get into the speakers in a second, but just a couple of other accessories I bought. I had to buy an audio interface. These speakers do technically take an unbalanced RCA input. However, it's a bit of a pain to cable because you have to have a cable going to each speaker. It's not like PC speakers where you connect a cable to one speaker and then connect a cable between the two. So I'd have to get all sorts of adapters, and I wanted to get a really good quality audio output, not just use the ones built into my dock or my laptop. So I went for this. Now this isn't particularly high end, it's a fairly basic audio interface, and it's the Behringer U-Phoria UMC202HD. It was about 55 quid, which is quite cheap for audio interfaces, but it seemed to have decent specs, so I'll give it a go. If it's rubbish I can always return it and get something higher end, but this should be quite good for the price hopefully. So we'll take a look at this as well shortly. And then to connect it all up, I bought some XLR to TRS cables to connect the speakers up to the balanced outputs on the interface. So what we'll do is we'll get the speaker out, take a look at it, see what you get, take a quick look at the audio interface, see what it's like, then I'll go and connect it all up and we'll try it out. So here we have one of the speakers. They're both identical of course because you do buy them individually. So there's a box, shows a picture of the speaker on the front. Obviously we'll take a look at it when it comes out. We're inside here some of the specs. I'm not an audio expert so I probably can't go into these too much. But yep, so it's a 5-inch woofer. Peak sound pressure level is 106 decibels. Sounds quite loud. Not going to be having it that loud. Frequency response is 45 Hz, 25 kHz. That's pretty good. It's not going to be insanely bassy like having a separate subwoofer, but it should still be pretty decent. It's bi-amplified, which means there's two amplifiers. One for the woofer, one for the tweeter, so you've not got a single amplifier sharing them. You've got two separate amplifiers. XLR and RCA inputs, so the RCA input's unbalanced and the XLR is balanced. 3 kHz crossover, various dimensions, and it's got a 2-year warranty and I think 3 years if you register it, so don't know how that works. But yeah, that's the outside. Let's take a look at the speaker. So we open the box up, we can see what we get. We get a standard IEC power connector. And now one thing that's a bit of a tangent I'm going to go on here, but it's actually really clever, is the packaging that they've done here. Is you see on the top here, there's this little panel sort of perforated here. Now that goes directly over where the power cable sits. So if this was being sold in a country where the power cable wasn't appropriate for the country it was being sold in, say someone's buying in a foreign country from a UK distributor, this allows the distributor to open up the box, sort of just pull it open like that, with the box sealed, and swap out the power cable for a different one. So that's a bit of a tangent, it's not hugely useful, but that's quite smart because I've bought things from foreign countries before and they've either included an adapter in the box or they've actually opened the thing to put a different power cable in. So that's quite a smart redesign. But yeah, not particularly exciting, I just noticed that and thought it was quite novel. So now let's see what we get with this. So some cardboard there, I get that out. Get rid of that. And we get a little welcome thing, so thank you for choosing Adam Audio. Lots of passion into the product, designed for very high standards, and you can download the manual. And greetings from Berlin. So yep, it's a little quick start guide. Could probably cope without that. So let's get the speaker out. Of course, I've also got the second one, but that's basically going to be exactly identical to this, so there's no point looking at them separately. So let's get the box out of the way. And here's the speaker. When I was buying these, there was a couple of other options as well. The main sort of competitor to this seemed to be the JBL 305P, which did look really good. However, I looked at some reviews and they seemed to say that the Adam Audio sounded a little bit better. And then they were also saying that even though the Adam Audio was slightly more expensive, it was still worth the money. However, when I bought this, the Adam Audio was actually cheaper than JBL, so it definitely seemed to make sense to buy the better sounding option that was also cheaper. So, yeah, and that's it there. Definitely looks really smart. So yeah, we'll go and take a closer look at it. So now here we have the front of the speaker, and it looks really smart. So down here we've got the 5-inch woofer, and up here we've got this tweeter, which looks a bit different to most tweeters. This is Adam Audio's U-Art, they call it. It's a ribbon tweeter, which is a different style of tweeter. I'm not hugely familiar with audio things. However, apparently this style of tweeter is much more responsive. It can react much quicker to changes, so it's supposedly much higher fidelity. And this is something that they use in all their higher end speakers, so it's really nice to see it at this lower end price point. And one thing that is quite nice is it doesn't look as yellow as it does in the pictures. In the pictures this looks almost fluorescent yellow and it would look a bit stupid, whereas actually in person it doesn't look too bad at all. It's a sort of gold colour, but it's not too bright, so that's quite nice. The overall finish is very nice. It's a nice wooden cabinet, and then on the front you've got this sort of bit here that's all angled neatly, so it actually looks really smart. Definitely a really nice design. So let's take a wee look around the back at the I/O. What you've got here is you've got the big bass port at the top, Adam Audio Berlin, Germany, including their full address. They're obviously very proud of that. And down here is various settings. So you've got settings for your high frequency and low frequency, so you can adjust sort of almost like gain, like slight boost and slight limits on the gain, I think. So plus 2 dB, 0 and 2 dB, and then plus 2 dB, 0 and minus 2 dB. Yeah, so it's minus on the bottom. Then you've got level adjust, so that goes from minus 60 up to 18, and then it goes to 0. Generally with these you wouldn't use this like a volume control because you've got two separate speakers and they're going to be connected to a single source, so you don't want to have to use both speakers manually to change the volume on them separately. So you generally change the interface volume either on your computer itself or your source or your mixer or your interface device. So you would use that to like match the level, but you wouldn't need to really use this to change the volume. Finally, you've got the two inputs down here. So you've got the balanced input, which is XLR, and the unbalanced input, which is an RCA jack, and a little switch to toggle between them. Now in my use case, I'm going to be using the balanced input, which should be slightly less susceptible to interference than using the unbalanced one. With a balanced input, you have three conductors. The first one's the ground, the second one's the signal, and then the third one is an inverse of the signal. This allows the amplifier to sort of cancel out interference that's sort of picked up by the cable, so it should be a little bit better. Obviously the unbalanced input's there though if you wanted to just connect it to a more basic thing. Finally down here you've got an IEC connector for power and a mains power switch. One thing to bear in mind with these, it's not a huge deal, it's just something that occurred to me, is that because it's not like PC speakers where you plug everything into one speaker and then have a cable between the two, if you wanted to connect something simple to this like a phone or something, that could be a bit of a pain because you've not got a single input you plug it into. You have to connect it separately to each speaker for the left and right channels. So it's not a huge deal for something like this, but it's worth bearing in mind. So that was a look at the speaker. Now we'll take a quick look at the interface before we connect it all up. So this is it here. You get a manual and a sticker if you want to show off for some reason. Get rid of that. There's the unit itself. So you get a USB cable inside there to connect to the computer. And then here is the interface. So it's a fairly nice metal enclosure. So hopefully get this out somehow. There we go. So on the front you've got various inputs and outputs. So this does have inputs as well, it's not just an output device. So it's got two inputs here. These can either take a 1/4" jack or an XLR connector, they're sort of dual connectors, you can take both. You've got two here, and then you can switch them between line level and instrument level, which would also be for microphones. So I can use these as line level inputs or for microphones. There's a sort of volume level adjust there, and this button labelled pad, I'm not sure what that is, I'll need to read the manual. Then over here you've got the outputs. This is what I'm going to be using this for. I like having the inputs because I might use them in the future, and there is a project I'm doing that will require me to use decent inputs, but I'll mostly be using this as an output device. So you've got an output level adjust there, headphone level there with a headphone jack, and then direct monitor. So what direct monitor does is if it's switched off, which you'll normally have it off, audio from the input devices goes into the computer, and then the computer plays the audio back and it comes back out again. What direct monitor does is it connects the inputs directly to the output and bypasses the computer. So I'm going to generally leave that off, but it is good to have there. Now around the back's where I'm actually going to need to connect stuff. We've got a USB connector for power and data, a Kensington lock for if you're installing this somewhere that's bad enough to require you to lock down a 50 quid device, but yep, Kensington lock if you really needed it. 48 volt phantom power, so you can use that if you've got microphones that require phantom power to come out the power jack, the audio jack. One thing I have noticed is there's only one of these and there's two microphone outputs. So I'm not sure if, I presume that only does it on both. So if you had like a powered microphone and then a non-powered microphone, you might not be able to do it. I'm not 100% sure, but you do have that there. And then finally you have the two outputs. So these are TRS jacks and they're balanced outputs. One for the right speaker, one for the left speaker. Obviously those are 1/4 inch jacks and the speakers take XLR. So I've now got these cables here, which are 1/4 inch jack TRS to male XLR. So I'll be using these to connect the speakers up. So that's all the hardware I've bought. So what I'll now do is I'll go away, set these up, and we'll come back and listen to them. Okay, so I've now got both speakers sitting out here, and then the audio interface in the middle. So let's connect it up and try them out. So we just need to plug the XLR cable into the back of each speaker. That there, and then plug that into the left output on the interface. There. Do the same for the other speaker. Also into the interface there. And now we just need to plug the USB cable in. So, got the USB cable to go into the interface. I go back there. Now let's try this out. So I've got my laptop here, plug this in. I'm just going to set the volume quite low just because I don't want it to be too loud, so I'll set it sort of middle volume there. Try and plug this in. So, switch speakers on as well. Just turn the mains on. And now if we connect this in, see what happens. Cool, so the speaker sort of popped there when the interface powered up, so I think the interface must do that when it powers up. That's not great, I'd rather it didn't do that, but I'll cope. It's not great at doing that, but anyway, that's fine. So it's now connected to the laptop, so let's see up here. Yep, so it's now showing up as a second output device, so we can pick that. And now let's try and play some music. Okay, so I don't know how well that came across on camera, but these sound really good. Now, I'm not going to do proper audio tests with the speakers in this position, because I don't think this table in this environment really helps them. This table is one of those cheap IKEA ones. It's almost like made of cardboard inside, and it really does seem to vibrate with the bass. So I think that could maybe have an acoustic effect on it, and they're sitting quite close to a wall, which also doesn't really help. So what I'll do now is I'll go and get these set up on my desk, as I'm going to have them when I use them. And then I'll come back and do the actual audio tests while it's sitting on my desk set up properly, rather than sitting on this table. So now here we've got my desk where I'm going to be setting these speakers up, and there's one slight problem, and that is that there's not enough space on the desk to fit them. There looks like there maybe is at the sides of the monitors, but there isn't enough space to fit them on there. The monitors are just too wide and the desk's just too narrow. And I don't really want to get a bigger desk, especially since this is already a really big desk. They're 27-inch monitors, which is why they take up a lot of space. However, I've had a plan. It's probably a terrible plan and it's probably going to be a disaster, but it's a plan nonetheless. So let's take a look at what I'm going to do. This is a VESA monitor arm, and the reason I went for this one in particular is it has a full 90-degree tilt. Like that. You can probably see what I'm planning here. Now this is a piece of MDF I made up earlier, which I've cut to a sort of certain size, painted black, and then drilled some holes in it with countersunk bits on top. You can almost certainly work out what I'm doing here, but here's one I made earlier. So we've now got a bit of MDF, screws going through, and the VESA plate mounted on the back. So if we take this one off here, Take that off, pull that out, slide the new one on, and now I have a speaker stand. So I can mount the speakers on this, and then one on the other side, tie all the cables to the stand, route them into the back of the interface on the desk, and it'll be completely neatly sitting here floating above the desk. So I'm not having to have it sitting on the desk, nor do I have to have a floor stand that would likely kick over or would take up floor space. It can still be mounted to the desk, but without having to have the desk space because it can overhang the edge slightly. So I'm definitely quite proud of this homemade design. I'm not sure how this will work for like audio transfer. Will the audio transfer through this to the desk? Is that a problem? But if I did need to get isolation pads, I could put an isolation pad on this or something like that. So I'm definitely quite happy with this. So what I need to do now is get the other one put on the other side, then get the speakers mounted. Okay, so that's the speakers installed, and I have to say I'm really pleased with how this turned out. They just look so neat on the stands there and take up no floor space or additional desk space. It's just a really clean, neat setup. So you can see I've got the two speakers there, and I've got the audio interface sitting on the desk hooked into my docking station. So I can still connect this entire setup up with a single Thunderbolt 3 cable, which is brilliant. Now as for the sound quality, while I'm definitely not an audiophile so I can't go into a huge amount of detail and compare it to hundreds of high-end systems, these do sound absolutely amazing. The audio is extremely clear, and it's hard to describe. It's almost just everything just sound. You hear more. Like I'm hearing more parts of tracks that I've not heard before. Just like little sounds in the background that you just normally wouldn't notice are a lot clearer on these speakers. In particular, definitely the high end. These tweeters seem to make a massive improvement. So you can definitely quite clearly hear the high end's just a bit more defined. Just sounds a lot clearer. The only downside I've really noticed is that I'm actually now starting to notice imperfections in music. So if I've got a track that's fairly low bit rate or it's a bit badly compressed, there's a slight problem with it there, you can hear it a lot clearer. I've even spotted some tracks on Spotify where I can actually hear like compression artifacts and stuff. So it's good because it does sound a lot better, but I am now noticing problems a little bit more. But yeah, they do sound absolutely excellent. Now because these are reference monitors, they have a very flat response curve. So you don't get any sort of pounding bass or anything like that. It's a bit more flat, but they still sound really good. I also tried out running equalizer software on my machine, so it was called EQ Mac I ran, and it actually worked quite well, and playing with that did make music sound a little bit better at times, but it was very subjective. It was just a case of playing about with it and seeing what I found. But it was a little bit unstable, so I've been going without it for a while, and they still sound brilliant. And in my last video that I've uploaded, the Microtech one, I edited it using these speakers, and it was so much easier to do the equalization of the audio because it was just so much better hearing exactly what I was saying rather than hearing what the Bose speakers were sort of changing it to, if that makes any sense. So yeah, editing videos with these was also a lot better. Now it's obviously very difficult to get sound quality across on YouTube because you're listening through your speakers and then you're listening through my audio recorder, and YouTube's probably done some sort of compression to the audio. So it's very hard to get across. But people seem to like it, so I'll do a quick sound test anyway, just so people can hear what these sort of sound like. So we'll go through a few tracks from the YouTube audio library, and we'll do that now. So there we go. That was a look at my new audio setup based around the Adam Audio T5V monitors. And overall I'm really impressed. It sounds brilliant and it's a massive upgrade over what I had before. So thank you very much for watching. And if you're interested in buying any of the products featured in this video, there's links in the video description. Thanks for watching.